Hello and welcome to another talk time. We've got Roger back, Roger Saxelby, who is a very, very seasoned clinical hypnotherapist here in New Zealand. He's based in Auckland and he was an ex-trainer to pass on the mantle of clinical hypnotherapy to many, many students over the years. It's a wonderful privilege to have him here and to unpack his knowledge bank. So I hope you enjoy today's talk time with Roger Saxelby. So welcome back, Roger. Nice to have you here. And I'm ready to unpick your knowledge bank because you have so much knowledge through all of those amazing years of connecting with interesting people, going and turning up, reading lots of different books. But I want to talk about, I guess, to begin with, the art of suggestion. Okay?
The art of...
When you think of that, what comes to your mind as a trainer, as a hypnotherapist, the art of suggestion?
Well, I guess suggestion is a normal, natural part of life. You know, we probably wouldn't learn anything if we weren't open to suggestions by other people, because, you know, everything that people say to, well, so much of what people say to us is actually suggestions. And suggestion obviously plays a big part in healing. Yeah, it's a vast subject, to be honest. Suggestion is definitely a major part of hypnotherapy. And some hypnotists believe that all hypnosis is just suggestion, and others talk about the different states of, you know, mind states or brain states, the various levels of our brain functioning. But no matter what you think or how you practice, suggestion is a major part in helping other people. We build expectations, but suggestion is not only words; it's your body language, your appearance. There's so many things that come into it. You know, I mean, I met people years ago who were in America. The two sisters that came to be interviewed were thinking of training with me, and one did and one didn't actually, but they met this guy in New York and they went to him for a stop smoking session, and he just actually made a very, very authoritative statement to them, and almost everyone immediately were affected and stopped smoking. I mean, you read about these people who've got some amazing ability to influence other people, you know. It's quite fascinating, actually.
When I think about suggestion, for me, it's really tuning into what is the ultimate that client needs to reinforce, and how do we best go about that. And I know that people, when they go away and they're in their daydreamy state, are ultimately suggesting their reality to themselves all the time through the internal dialogue or the repetition of habit or routine. All of these things are compounding those suggestions of belief towards themselves. And one of the things that I learned early on is helping the client to recognize how powerful their own suggestion cycle actually is, and to identify maybe the negative suggestions they might have got caught up into habit, you know, like, oh, I can't do this is too hard, or I'm not intelligent enough, or whatever other suggestion labels they might have. I think as hypnotherapists, this is a big part of our work, isn't it? Is to help that client somehow reframe that.
Well, we're open to suggestion from the moment we come into the world, really, because the suggestions that our parents and brothers and sisters and teachers and the people that we come in contact do make a big difference, especially in those first roughly 7, 8 years or so, because as you know, we're basically, you could say, we're in a state of open to suggestion. We haven't, our brain hasn't developed. We're not thinking logically or rationally, and we take in these suggestions as gospel truth in a way. And I'm sure you've had the experience, as I have, people who come to you that are 40 years, 50, 60, 70 years of age, and are still being affected by suggestions that became truths to them in those early days. And of course, we help them with, in some cases, regression, sometimes, depending on the person, just straight or authoritative suggestions, or indirect suggestions, stories, metaphors, and things like that. But I think that the majority of people in the world have been affected by those very early years, and it's made a difference to their beliefs about themselves, about the world. We know child development. We decided we can trust people or we can't trust people. We're very suspicious. We're afraid of what's happening in the world, or we see it as a joyful place. So you get the variety of personalities that come to you for help. I think it's quite fascinating.
Absolutely. Talking about the personality, sometimes depending on that personality sitting in front of you will depend on what you do with them. It's when we think about the idea of scripts, I think we touched on that before, they're very linear and they don't always apply to every human sitting in front of us. So I think the art of understanding the foundations of good suggestion is a big part of what we learn as we get better and better doing this craft. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I remember I met the late Jerry Kine in America years ago. He walked into a training course that Gil Boyne was running. And as you know, we've had speakers who have trained with Jerry Kine, the late Jerry Kine. I do remember him saying, you've got to give people suggestions. And he used a very authoritarian manner because he was a follower of Gil Boyne. But he used to say, you've got to give people suggestions that they feel good about, that they want to hear. So I guess it's a matter of listening to people, finding out what they actually require, what's been holding them back, and listening for the words that they use as well. It's very helpful to feed back very often the words that they use themselves because they believe that. Yeah, Jerry Kine, he came into Gil Boyne's class one day and offered to run a free evening class for those that were interested in coming back. And he ran a whole course on marketing because he was a marketer before he became a hypnotherapist. But I remember him saying that he studied videos of Gil Boyne word for word. And as you may or may not know, he became one of the top trainers in America many years ago, ran Omni Hypnosis in Florida.
Actually, that brings me to mind of Barbara Short. Barbara, what's her last name? She does the Omni Hypnosis.
Yeah, she spoke very highly of Jerry Kine, and he put out lots of cassettes and videos, and I bought quite a few videos off Jerry Kine, so I learned quite a lot from some of these people in the past, you know.
I think when we look at the trainers of the past, something that I've noticed is we have moved away from that more authoritarian styled hypnosis and into a more client-centric sort of humanistic approach where we do ultimately believe that the client has the answer. And I think that's where good suggestions are born. It's not the generic ones, it's often the ones that are specifically for that client and really listening and tuning into the client's needs.
Yeah, I may have mentioned in the previous interview, I quite often say to clients, if you were able to sit here and be the hypnotist and be the client, what's the message you would like to put into your own subconscious mind? What would be helpful for you? And quite often they say, I haven't got a clue, but quite often they will give you some information that can be really helpful. And so just feed it back to them in different words, of course. But I do believe that the client, I've always believed the client has the answers within. It's just a matter of helping them to become aware of that, not giving, which we learned in counseling training, not giving advice, not telling people what to do, like the old-time, very authoritarian hypnotists. A lot of them came from the stage and they used the same techniques. But having said that, they got the results. And that's what counts. It doesn't matter, I don't think, what method you use, as long as the client gets the results that they want.
There are expectations that many clients have seen a stage hypnosis show and they want to be hypnotized like that. And so if you can do that for the client, then the client's going to be able to take that on board. If, however, you have a slightly resistant client who may not genuinely be a great candidate for stage, who may need a little bit of a different approach, then appealing to the need to feel heard or understood, I think, is a big part of that therapeutic exchange. Some people don't want to feel heard and understood at all. They just want you to kind of help them click out of it or reboot the system. It's quite interesting.
Well, Erickson, of course, said that there's no such thing as a resistant client, that we have to find the right technique or the right method to be able to help them. The only resistant clients that I've ever met have been people that have been sent against their will. Yeah, I had a young man many years ago who was sent by his probation officer, and he was very resistant. The point is, you've got to find a way to get through to that person. I would ask them about their interests. What can I actually help them with? And if you can't get through to them, what's the point of continuing? If they're resistant, they're not going to be taking it in. So most people come along, they want to be helped. Otherwise, why would they be there? Why are they going to come and spend their money and their time? The only ones that I've had, apart from that young man, with people, I'm here to stop smoking. My missus won't get off my back. And then they can go back and say, look, I went to this hypnotist, even he couldn't help me to. So I suppose they're resistant. But other than that, I think listening, as you mentioned, is a very important part of the work that we do, because some people really just need to have someone who is prepared to be non-judgmental and listen to their story. And because so many of us, we don't really communicate with each other sometimes, I've met people that I've known for years, and I've gone to their funeral and I've heard so many fascinating things about their life. I've never found that out. Didn't ask them about it. Didn't talk about it. And in fact, even ex-wives, the same thing happens. Sometimes you end up married to someone, get a divorce, and you realize I didn't really know much about that person, and they probably didn't know much about me. So I think that's one of the interesting things about relationships. You know, probably I think we're given relationships to try us out, test us.
I wonder how
That's
many
my philosophy. That's my philosophy anyway.
Yeah, I wonder how many people out there can relate to that. This is the thing. We do live in a world where people are journeying quite privately in some respects, and they hold back on what they really think. They don't want to rock the boat. They avoid conflict. And all of these situations build internal stress, and they're not able to be their authentic self, or they're not feeling supported, perhaps because they're not sure even how to ask for support. So when they come into, I think, a hypnotherapy space, or even a therapeutic space, someone is there to support them emotionally, that might be one of the first and only times that they even have that experience of positive regard and that non-judgmental exchange that helps them to feel okay about themselves.
Yeah, unconditional positive regard. I think people are afraid of being, or maybe they don't even know what is their authentic self. And they're afraid to, we always worry about what other people will think. And we take that into consideration. That can hold us back quite a bit, I think, And I know for myself that's been the case. But as I've got older, you tend to put that aside and do the things that you want to do and say the things that you want to say a bit more openly, I think. In fact, I watched a video last night on YouTube. It was a 90-year-old man who was basically saying, don't hold back and don't, we've heard the story many times. The relationships that you have with your wives, partners, children, and other people is the most important thing in life. And looking back, he spent too much time building up his business, not being there for his children at their special occasions at school, not being there for his anniversary on one occasion, disappointing his wife. So I think, personal relationships are just so important in our lives.
Mm-hmm. I think this is often the theme of how people come in. They're suffering from maybe depression or anxiety. And if we look further into the causation, it's often interpersonal relationships not going well. Whether there's a misunderstanding with their family members, or maybe it was history from how they were brought up, and maybe that disconnection or feeling they've been judged or shunned, or there's some wounds that they're carrying. And that's often the work that we do, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, there's about 8 billion people in the world, and there's probably about 8 billion different beliefs and opinions and biases and so on. And, everyone sees the world in their own particular way. And we can never get to know each other entirely, I don't believe. But we can make an effort to see and understand other people's points of view. I mean, one of the major problems in the world today, probably worse than ever, is the number of wars in the world. I just can't get my head around that in this day and age, with so much knowledge from the past, so much learning, and so much technical um, improvements in the world, we're still killing each other. We're still bombing people, bombing schools and hospitals. It's just, and I'm getting a bit carried away there, but it is. There's a lot of anxiety in the world today, and we're getting a lot of young people that've got no purpose. They don't, the suicide rate is sky high in some countries, New Zealand, for instance, and some young people, they live on their telephones, they live on social media, but they don't talk to their friends or neighbors. It's just incredible. So you get people coming along that just don't even understand what life is about. They've got no real guidelines, and I think that's very sad.
I think too, Roger, fear is underpinning many of the things that you've been talking about. Fear that I'm never going to be able to be rid of this depression or get over this situation, and that causes people to, make terrible decisions of taking their own life. There can also be fear of not having enough, which is really where the conflicts of war come in. There's a lot of fear stories that are being built and perpetuated, and in a way they're a suggestion out into the landscape of humanity that then gets taken up as a reality. But actually any construct can be questioned. Any story that's been built is not necessarily fixed or permanent. It is just a story of belief for that moment in time based upon the knowledge to that point. And I think as hypnotherapists, we help people to break free often of the old stuck story using the art of suggestion and the idea of impermanence and things being able to be changed. Otherwise, people wouldn't come in to see us if they didn't believe on a core level that change is possible. And I think as hypnotherapists, we have to hold that space for them, that belief that magic's possible, that transformation is possible.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. And one of the things that suggestion has a big influence on is our imagination. And I recently heard someone say, the past is all imagination. It doesn't exist. The future is all imagination. And even right this very moment, we're living in our imagination. So imagination plays a big part in life as well. And we can influence that with the words that we use, the way we speak to people, and just using suggestion generally.
I am glad you brought that up, because one of my favorite suggestions is imagine as if. So imagine as if you were living your happiest life. Tell me about that. And as soon as you get that person to start to imagine as if they're living their happiest life, they start to unpack what that means to them, what that would look like, sound like, feel like. And I think if we can plant that seed of possibility, that's the magic right there, starting to percolate, starting to stimulate that person's idea of what change could be. Quite often when people are stuck in that change, Roger, they don't always think about anything beyond that. They get stuck in that reality, that view, and that's where I think hypnotherapy does really a good job in the way of engaging imagination, helping that person to engage the right thinking, the right actions. What do they want that's going to be their ideal success?
Yeah, I think imagination is much more important than I think we normally think of it, because it's involved in everything that we do. We imagine what could have been if we're just behaved or made different decisions in the past. With our hypnotherapy, one of the things we can do is future pace, get people to imagine a brighter future, or if they've got some goal, go to the end of that goal, imagine that you've already achieved it, and look back to realize or see the steps that you took to reach this particular goal. So we're helping to stimulate their imagination, but also to motivate them, because once they can imagine a brighter future, then they can become more motivated.
I think too that stems into the art of metaphor, storytelling, and engaging someone's imagination, and their brain will make it about them on some level, even if it's a deep structure metaphor. They will make it make sense, and that's the magic of storytelling and the art of suggestion. It's like, okay, if we move into a surface structure metaphor versus a deep structure, a surface might be sharing with the client someone else's breakthrough and what helped them. And you're not saying directly to them, you must do this, this, and this. You're sharing a story of success, and the client's imagination starts to work upon that, and they start to project themselves into that situation as if it might be their truth too. Like, oh, maybe I could do that. And that's that seed being planted by how we, I think, as hypnotherapists, utilize surface structure metaphors and deep structure metaphors, that placement and that spaciousness for that client to work it out.
Telling stories is a great way to get through to people, because there's no resistance. And if you use the right story, the right metaphor, you can bypass that logical thinking process, and it's just accepted on that deeper level, and it can bring about changes in their attitude, their behavior, and even, as you mentioned, help to motivate them to realize that it is a possibility for them to be able to achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve.
If we think about things like embedded suggestions, they are kind of woven within the idea of imagine as if things were working really well from now on. It's amazing how quickly that can happen, isn't it? So we can be very clever in the way we might structure an embedded suggestion within a statement that's very hypnotic during that session. Yeah, so, there's an art form to it, isn't there?
There is, and you mentioned how quickly things can change. In the subconscious mind, time doesn't really exist. And that's one of the reasons that hypnotherapy can be so effective.
I think too, with regression and changing how the memory is feeling for a client is what hypnotherapy, I think, does well at. Because if we invite the client to get resources from the future, let's say, and then travel back through time and space with those resources to help their little self before the event even occurred, that's possible. This is the thing. And then that construct of that memory is changed forever. They don't ever think about it the same way that they used to, because they've added to it, and they've added something resourceful to it. What are your thoughts on that, Roger?
Yes, that's one of the main things about doing regression. Take the person back, change the events in their mind, or help them to change it, and they see everything in a different perspective, and it can make all the difference.
When it comes to regression, I think setting it up is the art of suggestion too for successful regression work. So if the client is led to believe that regression is going to be safe. So if we implant even that suggestion that you are safe at all times, these are things that are really important for a successful session. If, however, we accidentally do the rookie move and we say, oh, you know, at any time, if you don't feel safe, you can always stop it at any time. Oh, my goodness, it just sets something up. Because although you might think you're doing them in a good turn, you're setting them up to think about the very thing you don't want them to experience. And then, of course, what does brain do with that? Well, it starts to hop on looking for opportunities to retract. So I think, you know, when we're looking at the modeling good suggestions, solid suggestions, the more we practice when we're getting into regression work, there are some really solid things to become aware of. And that's also not forcing a client before time, so always having permissions. So part of the art of suggestion is, are you ready now? Nod your head when you're ready. You know, any of those little things, that's the art of suggestion, helping the client to understand that you're there at their pace, at their time. And, you know, take as long as you need. And once that's done, nod your head so I know we're ready to do the next thing. And it could be 5 minutes and you're sitting there going, did they understand my instruction? And then eventually the little nod comes, you know. Yeah. Great. So is there anything else that you need to do that's going to be helpful? Is there any other part that has been getting in the way that you want to talk to? These are the arts of suggestion. It's not just about empowerment statements. It's about the instruction within that hypnotic journey that I think is important to understand, those constructs of understanding how to hold a session well.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that the client, first of all, feels safe and also recognizes that you're there to help. It's a partnership. You're working in conjunction with each other, and that they still have the control. They can come out of that particular state. They can stop it at any time that they want. But of course, in regression, we often use techniques where they're sort of standing outside and looking at it from a distance, like a fly on the wall. So that's a way of helping them to feel safe and protected. Other times, of course, we want them to revivify, as they call it, relive a particular experience, but always feeling that they're in control of what's going on in their own brain. And the other thing about hypnotherapy is not just affecting the memories, it's affecting the whole body, because the words that we use, and we know now a lot more about how the body stores memories. So I remember many years ago reading about the trance, an explanation of trance, and where is the subconscious mind? And the trainer said the subconscious mind is actually not just in the brain, not just in the mind, but it's your whole nervous system, your whole body, in fact. And I thought, I've always kept that in mind. It's been very useful and helpful to me, you know.
Yeah, I've actually got a book that comes to mind. The Body Keeps a Score. And I'm thinking, is this the one here? This is a different one.
I've got that book.
I've got the Deb Shapiro, Your Body Speaks Your Mind, which is quite useful too, that I have here in the office. But, you know, there are Louise Hay, you know, she sort of started to recognize that often our mindset was linked to conditions of illness within the body. And this is where hypnotherapy, I think, the neuroscience work and a lot of studies have shown the correlation between mind and body, right?
Yes. Well, a lot of times I've come across people who have actually had experiences where they've been in, for instance, I remember a lady told me she was down in Rotorua, got into the hot tub, into the hot pools, and she had all these memories came up for her. She realized that gave her some insight to some of the stuff that we had been working on. And she went through a lot of emotion. That was the word I was looking for, emotion. And I myself have had, when I was doing my training, we went away on 2 occasions for a week. And we were asked to take off our watches, to not contact anyone. We were isolated. And we did a number of things like going into hot tubs, working with each other. And I remember a whole lot of feelings and emotions that I still really don't know what was behind them. But after it was over, I felt a relief and a change in my whole demeanor, really.
I'm curious about that. I'm wondering whether it links back to the maybe memories of being in the womb, kind of being in a hot tub, being in water, surrounded in that way, weightless, whether there is some level of connection there.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure that that's the case because, you know, I know some of my old books by Leslie Lecron. He talked about people remembering. Well, we know that a lot of hypnotherapists doing regression take people back to the womb and even beyond. So whether that's a truth or not, I haven't decided yet. But we do know that that women can be influenced, or the baby in the womb can be influenced. I remember many years ago, I was quite amazed when I read that a lady who was a smoker, her baby reacted when she even thought about having a cigarette. And we know that music can influence the baby in the womb. So I think our learning, in a way, starts before we're even born. So if we can take people back and maybe tap into those memories that have been stored somewhere in the mind or in the body, even though they can't put them into words sometimes, we may be able to be effective and help them to overcome whatever difficulty or problems that they're having in their life.
Yeah. So, you know, even when we're looking at non-verbal suggestion, the hot tub might serve as a level of suggestion to a muscle memory, you know, of a time in the past when you were warm and surrounded by, you know, weightlessness inside your mother's womb. Absolutely. We're coming to a close, Roger, and I'm going to invite you to think about, I guess, words of advice out there for someone who is wanting to get into this field. Through all of your years of journeying in this and teaching others, what bit of advice would you like to share out there to the world, to the listeners that might have tuned in, that have that curiosity on?
Well, the people who have come to me for training over the years have come from a very varied backgrounds. You know, I've had even an undertaker came to train with me. I've had doctors, psychologists, counselors. I have had a butcher training with me. So people are just fascinated by the mind and how it works and how it affects us. And I know in my advertising, I used to advertise, come and learn what makes people tick. So it's a really fascinating subject, learning about hypnosis. As much as we know now, we're finding out more all the time. But to anyone, and of course, a lot of people who have had experience with hypnosis and they've realized how beneficial it is, and then they want to help other people. So I think if you're thinking about training, check it out, and by all means, at least get started and see if this is for you. I have had a number of clients over the years. They got into hypnotherapy and discovered that it wasn't for them, but they were fascinated with the things that they learned. But I remember one student saying, "Oh, I don't know how you can be bothered listening to people's problems all the time. I just feel like give them a kick in the backside and tell them to get on with life." So they're not very empathetic.
No.
So if you're genuinely interested in people and really want to help them, I really don't know of any better subject to study than hypnosis and hypnotherapy, because
Well said.
it just covers so much.
Yeah, it does. And also we have an eclectic toolbox. It's not just this one little wee thing that we do with people. We work in a very varied way, and I think that might surprise a lot of people, that it's not just regression or it's not just future pacing. There's all sorts of things that we can apply that can assist that person who's come in for support in a unique way that maybe has never been scripted before. That this is the thing. Understanding the foundations gives you then the understanding of how to use all the colors and put them on the canvas in a way that's going to make sense to the client. If you want to look at it like that, it's an analogy,
And another thing I believe that is really useful is to be able to look back and learn from the history, the different opinions, the different ideas, the different beliefs that they had about hypnosis. And even today, there's no real agreement, no universal agreement about what exactly is hypnosis. So it's continual learning. And I know for myself, I've gone through periods of thinking, "Oh, this is the answer. This has got to be the right way." And then I learn something else, and I think, "Oh no, got to look at," as you mentioned, the word eclectic, and that's why being eclectic is so useful to be able to help other people. You're not just seeing them and the world through one particular perspective, one particular way of looking at things. Be open, non-judgmental, listen to people, be empathetic, and above all, open-minded, learning all the time.
And you're a walking...
For me, it's been a
You are a walking, living example of that, Roger.
Well, I was just going to say, for me, this is when I decided to become a hypnotherapist, that was the best decision I think I've ever made in my life, because, if I look at my library, I've got books on hypnotherapy, NLP, I've got books on selling, salesmanship, books on sex, books on just about every subject. Hypnosis and the way our mind works comes into it. So it's just been a fascinating journey. And I'm sad that it's getting towards the end of my journey, but still learning.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Roger, for coming along and being a good sort and sharing little pockets of information that I'm sure will help others decide maybe this is their path, or, just maybe those that are out there who are already in clinical hypnotherapy, to maybe nudge them to read a little bit more about history and continue to grow in their field of knowledge. So thank you very much, Roger, for joining me today. I've really enjoyed our little chit-chats.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you, Meredith. And just one last thing that just occurs to me before I go. Hypnotherapy can be useful to parents in particular, because once you learn about the early days in childhood, you begin to see things differently. And I know that when my children were young, if I knew the things I knew today, I think it would have made a big difference, a very positive difference. But there you go, it's part of life. So thanks very much.
So if you are interested in training to become a clinical hypnotherapist, you can check out the website nzach.ac.nz. We have a diploma course there, and I'd love to be your guide. If you haven't liked or subscribed to this channel yet, and this is your sort of thing, please feel free to do that. Any comments, questions, bring them my way. I'm always happy to talk on whatever it is that you're curious about. So thank you again for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this journey with Roger Saxelby. He's been fabulous, and I've really enjoyed him, coming here and showing really how passionate he's been. And that is a testimony to finding your calling in life. And it's not, look, hypnotherapy or becoming a hypnotherapist isn't everyone's thing, okay? It's all right. But when it feels right on that deep, deep heart level, and you think, yeah, my senses kind of are pulling me towards that. For me, best decision I ever made in my entire life was to become a clinical hypnotherapist, and I've never, ever regretted it. It's only ever been a pleasurable journey to be able to see and witness people's lives change for the better. So thank you again. Tune in for another talk time next week, and I'll see you then. Bye.